play under center. But again, a lot of other teams' players have been snubbed too. So Tom Brady isn't the only guy. Does he really care about that? Is that something that you believe a quarterback who's won a myriad of Super Bowls and Super Bowl rings and Lombardies really cares about is going to the Pro Bowl? Or would they rather just play in the Super Bowl?
I don't think Brady cares taking the Pro Bowl off. It wouldn't matter. I think the one guy that we have to make sure we take notice in this New England game, though, if the Patriots do win it, is a guy by the name of James White. James White to be your versatile receiver out of the backfield, and if he breaks any runs, I've always thought that James White has always been a big part of what the New England Patriots do, and they're going to need him against the Titans.
Yeah, I think so as well. They're really, really going to have to put a punch in this one using James White. Of course, we've seen him get it to the Super Bowl and beat the Atlanta Falcons handily after it looked as if they had it pretty much wrapped up. James White punching the end zone in order to win the Super Bowl for them. So when I look at New England and I really think about the types of teams that they've really fumbled and flubbered against, it's going to be the Houston Texans. And I think that there's a lot to be said for the guy on the other side of the ball for the Tennessee Titans, and that would be Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, the rushing leader, heading into 2020. And interestingly for him, coming out of Bama, a lot of people say, well, he's a little too big, to be used as a running back. Maybe a little stiff. Maybe a guy who had glimpses of greatness throughout his early career. And that's okay for a guy who hasn't done anything, but he has. What is your take on Derrick Henry, and do you really believe that this could be his time to shine, being the rushing leader headed into this game against New England?
Well, remember, the New England Patriots are used to having a bye week during the wild card round, and they're not. So I think that Derrick Henry against the New England Patriots, I would say this is a possible coming up party for him. He's in the playoffs. He's playing against the Super Bowl champion. If he can go ahead and perform well against the Super Bowl champion, then that'll gain him a measure of respect that he hasn't had up to this point.
Well, I like Derrick Henry's physicality. I mean, he may not be the fastest guy, but trying to tackle him is pretty next to impossible, to be quite honest with you. He's been very good on the road, very good at home, and just one of those guys that you always wanted to see bust out and break out and be that standout player. And sadly, it hadn't been the case until this year. But you know what? This year is better than no time at all. Why? Because he's going against a very solid set of linebackers that come out of New England predominantly, and they're some of the best. But they've been tested at times. Does Derrick Henry pose a serious threat to this Patriots defense?
I say yes. Yeah.
Was it big body? Is it going to be trying to push people off with that long arm of his to stiff arm?
Very elusive. He's a very elusive running back is what he is. Yeah, he has a good combination of elusivity as well as power when he needs to, and he's not afraid to push somebody out of the way when necessary.
Well, what's really interesting is that the Patriots were tested up front by Baltimore, who basically handled them from the onset, Kansas City, and of course we've seen that Miami game, and you thought to yourself, well, this is going to be easy. You're going to walk in, to Miami. They're going to, just take care of the Dolphins like they always do, right? We've seen the Miami Miracle last year. Remember that? Well, almost similar to that this year, except for that Miami defense came to play. And what they were doing is they were setting the tone from the onset. They owned the line of scrimmage. They got a few sacks, and they really did what they needed to do. And what's really interesting about this is that now a very solid upfront core linebackers for Tennessee is going to really challenge Tom Brady to maybe try to upset this Titans team. I don't know that they're going to be able to get that kind of protection for Tom Brady versus on the other side of the ball, what protection it lays ahead for Ryan Tannehill. Ryan, what's kind of funny about Ryan Tannehill came from Miami, which is a complete dumpster fire, and it still kind of is. I'm not going to lie, it is, because it is what it is. And
right.
coming over from Marcus Mariota and saying, look, we've seen enough. Mike Vrabel had seen enough. He says this is not going to happen. So midway through week 6, here comes Ryan Tannehill starting. And what does he do? He throws for a touchdown. He's completed almost 71% of his passes and leading in passer ratings and yards per attempt. That's amazing. So again, it's not the player. It's not the system that fits the player. It's a player that fits the system. And he does not fit the system there in Miami. And that's why he's doing so well, because he's thriving in a system designed for him to play in. Am I over-exacerbating Tannehill's escapability and his percentages and yards per attempt? I mean, you tell me, is Ryan Tannehill exploding right before our eyes and we're just not really looking at it?
Fresh start, Rudy. Mike Vrabel. Don't underestimate this guy. Mike Vrabel's the type of guy that, number one, he knows a lot about the New England system. And, hey, listen, there's nothing wrong with a quarterback getting a fresh start someplace else. You ever heard of a guy by the name of Jim Plunkett winning a Super Bowl or 2 with the Raiders when New England dispatched them? It happens. Quarterbacks go on other places. You have a coach that believes in you. It goes, and then how does it work out? In many cases, it does work out pretty well. So I think Ryan Tannehill, to me, was a very hot quarterback going down the stretch, and now he has an opportunity to carry that over into the postseason.
I think he will. I really believe Tannehill, and I'm not jumping on the Tannehill bandwagon because I really haven't spoken a whole lot about the Tennessee Titans or Ryan Tannehill, because I still have this taste of Mariota, of Ohana. When I think of the Titans, I think of Marcus Mariota. I got to get the vision out of my head. It's going to blind me, blind me with science, as far as that's concerned. But I do appreciate Ryan Tannehill. I always have. I may not have ever mentioned it, but I have, and I love watching how efficient he is and how he has been efficient for this Titans team so far. Now, this is being played in Foxborough. Foxborough, one of the hardest, toughest, most loudest places outside of Arrowhead Stadium where the Chiefs play. Of course, Chiefs have their own battle up front, but they get the first week bye, which is probably the best thing that they could do right now. Heal up, light practices here and there, get ready for a postseason playbook. And New England, oddly enough, has probably one of the best home field advantage streaks in the NFL. I mean, in 2009, they haven't played a wild card game in Foxborough since that. So it makes you wonder, and I wonder, I think this is an upset. I think the Titans will take out New England on the road and move on into the next round.
I think New England will win it, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Titans pull off the upset.
I think they have everything working for them right now. And New England's trying to find the answers offensively, getting wide receivers like Jacoby Myers on page. He's a rookie. He's got some reps. Granted, of course, you're always dealing with Tom Brady, so there's always time on the clock for Tom Brady, for Tom and Julian Edelman to get into this synchronicity we've seen in Super Bowls past. I just think that Tennessee is playing with a massive chip on their shoulders, and now there's another chip added to the other shoulder, which is equally as big as the one on the left shoulder, because they're traveling into Foxborough. I think this crowd gets quieted early and often. I think Tennessee's going to score at will, especially with Derrick Henry leading the way.
But my question to you is this. Do you think that New England fans are wishing the Antonio Brown worked out because of the fact that they don't have the receiving core that they really need, especially in a game like this?
Well, I think so. Of course they do. There's no reason why. But at the same token, when you got a dumpster fire, mindset that Antonio Brown has, and he filed grievances against them, and he brought an entourage to his tryout with the New Orleans Saints when he didn't need to, when he was told not to. I think there are other guys who can step up. I take nothing away from what Antonio Brown has done on the field, but the problem that I have is that even still on the field, he's kicking coolers, he's arguing with coaches, and then he still wants to take shots at former coworkers like Juju Smith-Schuster, Ben Roethlisberger. It's almost as if it's a serious love-hate relationship for him when it comes to the Steelers are the ones who drafted him, for crying out loud, out of basically nowhere. to be the star wide receiver and ultimately contributed in some capacity and only in one fashion only, that if it wasn't for Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown would not have the type of receiving yards that he had with Ben with other teams. Same thing I said about Le'Veon Bell. Went over to New York, didn't have the touches, didn't have the touchdowns, did not have the offensive line. That's just the bottom line. And New York still needs help on that offensive line, which hopefully they'll get in the upcoming 2020 draft.
Well, Antonio Brown has done a great job running himself out of the league, that's for sure. And I think in Le'Veon Bell's case and Brown's case, I tell you that Pittsburgh Steelers situation that they were in was a lot better than they really understood or appreciated it. So these guys made their way out of Steel Town, and what have they done since? Nothing. They're
probably not going to. I think that there could be something to be said for, look, business is business if you're Le'Veon Bell. If you want to come back to a team that has one of the better offensive lines, of course they battle some injuries, of course, and suspension of Marquise Pouncey during the regular season for 2 games. Originally it was 3, but it got marked down to 2. I think Le'Veon Bell will be welcome back in Pittsburgh, to be quite honest with you. To be that solid running back. I mean, he led in yards from scrimmage. He led in touchdowns. He could have done so much more. But, the offseason is what that is for in regards to a conversation. Again, his is business. And, of course, business is busting for Antonio Brown, no longer booming. I kind of want to switch gears here for a little bit because, New Year's are supposed to bring great things, supposed to bring positive things, positive themes. We got the playoffs coming. Baseball's on its way to return. Hockey's playing its Winter Classic. That's in full swing. But you never expect, and of course they say it comes in 3s. Well, in this case it actually was 4. 1 slightly before the new year and 3 after the new year. And of course we can't go off the show. I refuse to exit the show without talking about these trendsetters, these people, these individuals, these players, these commissioners, these individuals help pave the way for what leagues are today. And we'll start off with Don Larson, who passed away. He was right-handed. He had the perfect game, the only perfect game pitcher. Was born August 7, 1929, and he played 15 years in Major League Baseball. He played for the Orioles, or the Browns back in the day, the Yankees, the Athletics, the Sox, the Giants, the Colt 45s, the Astros, and the Cubs. Larson more noted for doing something that nobody in Major League Baseball had ever done. He pitched a perfect game in a Game 5 in the 56th World Series. This guy is missed. He did so much for the game of baseball. He did what pitchers aspire to do, and that's pitch a perfect World Series game, regardless of the number, a perfect World Series game. He won the MVP award, the Babe Ruth award, because of that effort that he had exhibited while there. He passed away January 1st, 2020. So I want to send my sincere condolences to him and his family, and of course to all the respective organizations that he had played for. He's originally from Southern California, so I obviously have somewhat of a connection. I'm from Southern California myself, born in Michigan City, Indiana. What are your thoughts about the loss of Don Larson? How does a game move on from what he had contributed while he was in uniform?
Well, I mean, you have to, but the fact is there isn't another pitcher that's ever accomplished this feat. The only one that's close to it would be Roy Halladay throwing a no-hitter in the playoffs. But a perfect game in the World Series, think about it, it's only happened one time ever, Rudy. One time ever. And so you talk about an unbelievable accomplishment. That says it, at a clutch time, Don Larson did something that has not been repeated. That speaks volumes for itself.
Well, I think a lot to consider that he was a guy who was a team player. He played his heart out. I mean, he played basketball. He played in some baseball teams. He started off to be basically nobody and ended up passing away as being someone. He won a World Series twice. He was a World Series MVP. and of course that perfect game in 1956.